Well, the intention is to add to those programmes like Feedback, which are already available to download and keep forever, by giving listeners 7 days to download catch-up content, 30 days to store it before opening, and, once opened, 7 days to listen, bringing it in line with how iPlayer downloads operate for TV. But for some Feedback listeners, the announcement hasn't come soon enough. For several years, they've been using something called Radio Downloader through the website nerdoftheherd.com. This allowed them to download freely any BBC radio programme they wanted and to keep it forever. However, this was not a BBC-made or endorsed bit of kit, and earlier this month it was removed at the request of the corporation. A number of you wrote in to express your considerable disappointment.
Hello, Feedback. My name's Ian Hawkins, and I'm calling from High Wycombe. Radio Downloader was a great way of taking BBC radio programmes, putting them onto your iPod so you could listen to them at leisure, offline, long after the usual one-week listen again period had expired. I'm concerned that the BBC is to introduce some form of digital rights management offering, which means that programmes will be available temporarily but may disappear from my computer long before I get to listen to them.
My name is Nathan Jordan. I'm calling from Lancashire. Right now, a gentleman working in probably his bedroom has been able to provide a service for over 2 years that the BBC have not been able to. Why is there a delay? If one man can make their material available, why can't the whole of the BBC?
Well, let's pick up those points with Mark Friend, who's controller multi-platform for radio. Mark, why has the BBC had Radio Downloader removed?
So Radio Downloader was making available effectively all programmes from radio from the BBC to download without any kind of rights management around that. That's something that is against the BBC's terms and conditions. It's not allowed by the Trust, so we cannot make every programme available. And it goes against the needs of rights holders and indeed independent production companies.
Well, Nathan Jordan, perhaps anticipating that concern, had this to say.
I don't understand what the BBC are protecting and how they feel they're protecting it. Yes, I mean, there is an issue that the BBC have a duty to protect musicians. But when we're talking about BBC wholly owned production, they are the artists that they're trying to protect. What they're trying to do is a rerun of banning the cassette recorder back in the 80s.
So, Mark Friend, taking Nathan's point, why don't you just make available forever all those things made internally that you have the right, speech programmes which don't have musical content?
You might think in certain programmes that there are no rights issues. Typically there are. Background music, for example, is something which we have to strip out of programmes if we can do that. And in many, even factual programmes, for example, you'll find background music within it that is very hard to strip out. So there are issues within even programmes that people may not be aware of.
How many more programmes as a proportion, if you're a percentage, will we get than we have now?
I would hope that it's a really substantial increase.
But what's a substantial increase? Because that's
well, I say we're working through with rights holders.
Yeah, is that 50%? Is that 25% more? Is it?
No, substantially more. I mean, much more than 25% more. And we would hope to make a huge range of radio content available, including music output. That's our ambition.
So when listeners say, well, look, if an amateur can put this downloader into operation, it works and fine, and you can't, are you saying it's not just a question of the technology, you have other issues?
We have permission from the Trust, we can do the technology. Doing this in a controlled, managed way that respects the rights of rights holders is very different to what Radio Downloader was doing. In many ways, that's a great service. We want to offer something that's great, but that does respect the needs of the rest of the market and the needs of rights holders.
But you're not trying to restrict it. You'll make it available on as many platforms as you can?
Where it's technically possible and where it makes sense for the audience, absolutely. Our ambition with this is we're not trying to be tricky, we're trying to make it easier and better.